Hello, I'm Salim Abraham. You're watching Infofeed. A nation of 11 million people has just been unplugged. As we speak, Cuba is draped in a darkness so profound it's visible from space. No street lights, no internet, no fans to cut through the stifling Caribbean heat. This is not a mere power cut. It's a total systemic heart attack. On Monday, March 16, 2026, the Cuban national grid didn't just flicker, it flatlined. It's the sixth total collapse in 18 months. But this time, the silence feels different. The island is running on empty, no fuel, no spare parts, and increasingly no patience. Today, we look at the anatomy of a failure. Is this the result of a 60-year-old embargo, or the inevitable decay of a state that forgot how to build for its own future? Let's tell you how Cuba reached this dead end.
The story begins in the 1960s, after the revolution. Moscow didn't just send missiles. They sent the industrial DNA of the Soviet Union. They built the island's energy backbone mammoth, thermal power plants like the Antonio Guterres and the Felton. These were the pride of Eastern Bloc, designed to run on high-quality Russian crude. For 30 years, the lights stayed on through a sugar-for-oil swap. But when the USSR vanished in 1991, Cuba learned a hard lesson. When your patron dies, your lights go out. The 90s were dark, but then came Hugo Chavez. Venezuela became Cuba's new gas station, shipping over 100,000 barrels of oil a day in exchange for Cuban doctors. This fueled a brief energy revolution in 2006, where the government distributed energy-saving bulbs and small diesel generators. But it was a band-aid on a bullet wound. The core infrastructure of those aging Soviet turbines remained untouched, rotting in the salt air. The 2026 perfect storm. What happened on Monday, March 16th was the climax of three lethal variables converging at once. Number one, the de facto oil blockage. The catalyst wasn't a technical fault, but a geopolitical one. In January 2026, following the ouster of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela, Washington tightened the noose. The US issued a blunt ultimatum. Any tanker from any country that touches a Cuban port faces immediate, crippling tariffs. The result? Total isolation. President Miguel Diaz-Canel confirmed on Friday that the island hasn't received an oil shipment in over 3 months. Number two, the sulfur poisoning. With no imports, Cuban engineers committed an act of industrial desperation. They began fitting the Soviet-era boilers with heavy, domestic Cuban crude. Now, domestic Cuban oil is like tar. It's loaded with sulfur. When burned, it turns into acid, eating through the thermal pipes of plants that were already decades past their expiration date. The engineers, effectively magicians in hard hats, have been patching these pipes with scrap metal because they lack the hard currency to buy genuine spare parts. Number three, the cascading failure. At 1:40 p.m. on Monday, the hurt finally stopped. Antonio Guterres' plant suffered a catastrophic boiler leak. In a healthy grid, other plants would pick up the slack. But in Cuba, there is no slack. The grid is a fragile microsystem of islands. When Guterres tripped, it created a frequency surge that fried the rest of the network to prevent permanent fires. Within seconds, 11 million people were left with nothing. As of today, March 17th, the recovery is a crawl. Only 2% to 5% of Havana has power. The GDP has shrunk by 15% since the pandemic. It's now in free fall. Rare violent protests have broken out in the provinces. In Havana, the cacerolazos, the rhythmic banging of posts, are no longer just a sound. They are a warning to the palace. Over 2 million people have left in 5 years. This blackout is a final signal for the rest. If there is no light at the end of the tunnel, and no light in the tunnel, then why stay?
Cuba is currently a cautionary tale for the world. It's what happens when a nation's energy security is treated as a political bargaining chip rather than a basic human right. The government in Havana blames the blockade. Washington blames the authoritarian system. But while the elites trade barbs across the Florida straits, 11 million people are sitting in the dark, watching their food rot and their children's future dim. The magicians in the power plants might get the turbines spinning again by the weekend, but you cannot run a country on patches and prayers forever. The lights are out in Cuba, and it will take more than a few barrels of oil to bring back the dawn. I'm your Salim Abraham. This has been your deep dive. Facts inform, but stories transform.